Last year, Nickelodeon released two sequel movies based off two of their famous and loved IPs, Good Burger and Zoey 101. Ever since these films were announced, people were excited to see 90s Nick alumni Kenan Thompson and Kel Mitchell reunite after 23 years, and stars from Zoey 101 returning to Nickelodeon after 15 years to do Zoey 102. Unfortunately, both movies received average reviews, saying they were kind of unnecessary and disappointing. However, I still want to see if people were being too harsh on these movies. So do I think these movies are not as bad as what other people say? And which movie is the better one? Let's find out. Let's start off with Zoey 102. Taking 15 years after the original series, Zoey is now a TV producer, and her best friend Quinn asks her to be her maid of honor at her wedding with Logan. The wedding just so happens to take place on the season finale of the show Zoey's working on. Now, you might think that this movie is going to have a trope of a character trying to be at two places at once when it's nearly impossible, but that's not all. Remember Chase from the original show? Yeah, well, Zoey and Chase broke up between the end of the show and the movie. So in order for Zoey to show her best friends that she's recovering from the breakup, she hires an actor named Todd to be her boyfriend. The plot at first glance seems like an overbooking trope in TV movies and TV shows where the character has to be at two places at once, and also there's a lie reveal trope of Zoey having a boyfriend. Well, I didn't enjoy the latter trope in this movie that much for how cliche it was. I did like the former plot, because it was enjoyable for me. Yeah, I'll admit the overbooking can be hit or miss in movies and TV shows, but the reason why the trope works here is because the execution was handled well. Most of the jokes were surprisingly funny, with my personal favorite being the Dirty Dancing duet with Todd and Chase. However, I have to bring up that the comedy of the movie is practically the driving force for the narrative. So if you're not a fan of most of the jokes in the movie, you probably won't care for it as much as me. This film does tug the nostalgic heartstrings at the very end of the movie, where the characters celebrate Quinn and Logan's wedding at the PCA, which is without a doubt the best part of the movie. With that said, there are a few flaws. Remember Stacy and Mark from the original show? Well, throughout the third act of the movie, the two believe that Todd is a murderer, and right out of nowhere in a mid-credit scene, it's revealed that he is one out of the blue. It doesn't make any sense, and because I believe that they are going to supposedly end the series off like that, it feels completely wrong to do it to begin with. That, and I am kind of upset that Victoria Justice did not come back for this movie. However, that was a pretty minor issue. If I were to give it a rating, I'd say a 6.5 out of 10. It definitely has some issues, making it a sort of disappointing comeback, but I still find it decent enough to watch. Next up, we got Good Burger 2. Now, before we begin this review for this movie, I probably should give you 2000s and 2010s kids a history lesson. In the 90s and very early 2000s, two of the most popular Nickelodeon stars were Kenan Thompson, who you might know on SNL, and Kel Mitchell. In fact, these two best friends were actors in three different Nickelodeon programs. The first one being the sketch comedy show All That, from 1994 to 1999, the second one being a film called Good Burger, which premiered in 1997, and the final one being their own television show called Kenan and Kel, which aired from 1996 to its finale in July 2000. So like I said before, after 23 years, the dynamic duo is finally back in Good Burger 2. The movie starts off 26 years after the first Good Burger. Dex has quit Good Burger in hopes to become a successful entrepreneur, only for his hopes and dreams to go bust. After getting kicked out of his house, Dex calls Ed, who still works at Good Burger, to ask if he can stay at his home, to which Ed agrees. After deciding to work at Good Burger again, Dex tries to find a way to make money when he meets a lawyer from a conglomerate called Megacorp named Cecil, who offers to give all the employees at Good Burger big raises as long as they decide to merge the company with them. And Dex convinces Ed to sign a contract without Dex reading it so they can have money only for them, to realize that Cecil tricked them and that the contract said they can do whatever they want and fire everyone at Good Burger, causing Dex and Ed to make things right and save Good Burger. Now, unlike Zoey 102, where the comedy mostly carries the movie, the dynamic of the main characters carries the movie for the most here. Oh, there is some comedy from Ed in the movie, but it isn't the main driving force of the movie. Well, I have to admit that the comedy is much more weaker than the comedy in Zoey 102. The dynamic of the two main characters is very strong and is the best part of the movie. You can tell the two were excited to be together again in a Nickelodeon program. Considering how they even were the producers of this film, as for the rest of the film itself, it definitely has a lot of quirks, like a bunch of cameos from big celebrities like Kai Cenat, Young Gravy, and some of Keenan's SNL friends, including some from the first Good Burger like Carmen Electra, which genuinely feels like the crew is trying their absolute best to get the kids 13 and younger interested in something that came way before their time. Also, not to mention that the villain is kind of weak. Apparently, the villain is the younger sister of the villain in the first movie, which I always find that trope to be pretty weak, since it really shows that if you want to have the villain here be related to the original, why not just bring the original one back? Outside of that, the story is just decent like in the first movie, except even more over the top than the first movie. But just like Zoey 102, the good elements carry the movie, and if you're just turning your brain off to watch something for fun, it's just as good as that movie. The only difference, though, is that it's much more satisfying to see characters we know and love come back after 23 years of waiting than 15 years of waiting. So for that, I'd give it a 7.5 out of 10. Overall, these two movies did pretty good despite Dan rightfully not coming back to work on these movies for obvious reasons. But what are your thoughts on it? Let me know in the comments below, and once again, I'll see you guys next time.